What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today I'm going to be answering your questions. So we're just going to do a quick Q&A video. Now, for those of you who watch the channel frequently, you might notice something a little bit different about me, and this is what happens when you have to trim your beard weekly and the guard falls off. So don't mind the baby face too much. I've got some questions here that you guys sent in, and just to be completely transparent, I did look over them and really thought about some of the answers before recording this video, and it's because some of your questions were really good and I really had to think about the answer. So I'm going to try to answer your questions not only to the best of my ability, but I might actually give you more than you bargained for each question. So without further ado, let's jump right in and start with question number 1, which is, what is a book that you didn't like at first but has grown on you over time? Now, thankfully, I haven't read that many bad books. If I've DNF'd a book, it's been for a particular reason, and it's been very rare that I've read anything that I would consider bad. But as far as one that's grown on me, I actually have 2 for this. So the first is going to be World War Z by Max Brooks. Now, I kind of bounced off of this the first time that I had read it. I was really looking for a zombie book, as silly as that may sound. And obviously, this one's at the top of the list for most people. And so I picked it up and I really enjoyed the stories in it. But the thing that I wasn't crazy about is the way that it's written. The structure of the book is set up to where they are interviews of people who survived. And so we kind of already know that things have settled down. This is vastly different than the movie, by the way, just as a fair warning. But I wasn't crazy about the interview structure. I personally would have liked to read a linear story probably quite a bit more. And because I had not read something like this before, I did bounce off of it a little bit. And so I think I originally rated this book 3 stars, and just the more I thought about it, the more that I really enjoyed it, the more that I let it kind of sit with me, the more I kept coming back to thinking about it. It's really fantastic. And it's not just a story of zombies, which it is a story of zombies, but it's a story of how humanity can overcome some of the most dire circumstances. So that's the first one. The other one is actually Soul Cage by Luke Scholes. Now, if you guys have missed it, I've got this book as my giveaway for the month. So go check out that video. I think it's going to be right in here somewhere. Go check that video out if you're interested in winning this. And I didn't dislike this book. I actually really enjoyed it. But when I first read it, I did bounce off of it a little bit. It's the first self-pub book that I had read. And so I also received an e-arc of this. And so I received like an unedited proof of it, or at least not the final edit. And it showed in places. And so I was pulled out of the story a little bit. Also, it felt kind of familiar as far as fantasy stories go. I thought it was cool. I thought the magic system and things like that were really interesting, but there wasn't a whole lot. I don't want to say it didn't grab me, because it did. I really enjoyed the story. I didn't realize that it had set its hooks in until much later. And then over time, I kept thinking about the story. I kept thinking about how cool and unique that magic system was, that I bumped it up, I believe, to a 5-star book also. So what are a couple of books that I didn't care for so much at first, but liked more as time went on? The first one's going to be World War Z by Max Brooks. And the second one is Soul Cage by Luke Scholes. Okay, question number 2 is going to be, what are your thoughts on why Christian fantasy isn't a huge sector of the fantasy publishing industry? This is a very good question that I may not have a great answer to, but I wrote down that I think there are 3 reasons for this. Maybe not exclusively these 3, but I definitely think that these 3 are a factor. The first one's going to be clashing worldviews. The worldview of a Christian author should be that of a Christian. And when a Christian author, or an author that is a Christian, and I'll get to that in a minute, where the distinction is there, when traditional publishing encounters something like that, I'm talking like the Tours, the Orbit books, those guys, when they encounter something like this, they probably want something that's a little less heavy-handed, or maybe a little less allegorical, and they want something more vague, because it will reach a broader audience, which means more sales revenue. So I definitely think if a Christian wrote a book and they presented it to Orbit Books or to Tor Books with the disclaimer that I'm a Christian and this book has Christian themes, you're probably going to see some pushback. That's number one. The second reason I think is budget. I think probably some of these Christian authors, I think they probably don't have as large of a budget as somebody like John Gwynne or Brandon Sanderson. I think these guys tend to have a much larger budget, which they've earned it through their work, through merit and those kinds of things. But I think as far as like somebody that's trying to break in, I think their budget is probably going to be a little tighter. So they aren't as able to advertise and to really promote the book and go out and do book tours, those kinds of things. So I definitely think budget matters. And then sadly, I think the third reason could be that it's a lack of skill with the author. Now, I don't mean that all Christian authors lack skill. I don't think that at all. However, for those of you that have read Christian fantasy, and I mean the fantasy books that you find in the Christian section, not the fantasy books you find in the fantasy section, they tend to be, in my experience, the quality seems to be quite diminished. And there seems to be this attitude of, well, it's Christian, and so Christians will read it. And they might, but it definitely won't be as successful as something that as a story where someone's just trying to write a good story and it happens to have Christian themes, or maybe it doesn't even have to have Christian themes. And I put it in a similar category with Christian movies. I have a lot of people that ask me, have you seen Courageous, or have you seen God's Not Dead, or God's Not Dead 6, or whatever the new one is that's out? And most of the time the answer is no. And when they ask me why, I tell them quite frankly, just like I do with other people, that it doesn't look very good. The quality doesn't look good. The acting isn't very good. It's difficult for them to attain certain musical artists or licenses and things. So all of these things come together to make one high quality production. And so when the budget is diminished and there's a myriad of reasons why, just Christian movies tend to lack in quality. And so I think that does translate a little bit to Christian fantasy. Now, I'm using the term Christian fantasy and not Christians who write fantasy, because I think there is a distinction there. Actually, my favorite local radio show is hosted by some Christians. They're very upfront about being Christian. They talk about a lot of Christian themes. They openly talk about scripture. They've made it very clear that we are not a Christian radio show. We are a radio show full of Christians. And because of that, the quality of their show is phenomenal. And not only that, but they're also not boxed in to one type of topic. And so I don't want to call any of these authors necessarily out by name that I've read and have been kind of like, but I will say one that has been very successful on the flip side is James Allington. So James Allington is a Christian. He's a Reformed Christian that just happens to be an author. So he writes books that he wants to read. And so he just writes good stories, but he doesn't include a lot of the more adult content that you would see in some of these other adult fantasy books. And he's been very successful at it. Now, is it because he's been very heavy-handed with his Christian themes? No, but if you're looking for them, they are in there. And so I will say that I think if an aspiring author who is a Christian is looking to write a story or a book and get published, if I were you, I would start from the perspective of, I'm a Christian that's going to write a book, not I'm going to write a Christian book, if that makes sense. Can you do both of those things? Absolutely. But I think if you go, I'm going to write a Christian book, and then I want it to be fantasy, you've automatically put limitations on yourself, which I think you can do well. But as far as being successful in the fantasy or sci-fi genre, I think the successful Christian authors you see are those authors who are Christian, not those who are Christian authors. I'm looking at guys like C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, James Allington, J.K. Rowling, those types of people. So excellent question. On to question 3, which is, if you had to watch a scene from a movie on a loop for exactly 41 hours, what would it be? This one was kind of tough. I wasn't really sure how to approach it, because I'm like, well, if I watch one scene for 41 hours, I'm going to hate it. So do I want to pick a scene that I already hate? And it's going to exasperate that hate for that scene or that film? Maybe. Or do I want to pick a scene that I love that I'm going to end up hating? And so I kind of came to the conclusion, why don't I pick a scene that I could watch for 41 hours straight without hating it, which is going to be very difficult. And the one that I came up with is Samwise Gamgee's speech in The Two Towers, where he's talking to Frodo. They've been brought to Gondor. They're being attacked by the Nazgul, and Sam tells Frodo, he gives him that speech where he's telling him to cling on to hope.
What are we holding on to, Sam? There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
That would probably be at the top of the list, predominantly because I would want to learn that word for word and be able to recite it later. So excellent question. All right, question number 4 is, who is the most overrated sci-fi and fantasy character? Okay, for this one, I also have 2. So I picked a sci-fi and a fantasy, and I'm probably going to get some flack for both, which is great. The first one is going to be Paul Atreides from Dune. Man, I do not like this character. I do not like Paul at all. I know some people are going to be in the comments and they're going to say, "Oh, you're not supposed to like Paul because it's supposed to show that, hero worship is bad." No, I get all that. Okay, I understand that. However, he is still the main protagonist of the story, and I didn't like him at all, which led me to not like the book. I didn't hate the book, and I guess I wouldn't even go as far as to say that I disliked the book. I did enjoy it, but he made it a lot more difficult. I am not a fan of Paul Atreides. I do not get it. Not for me. And the second is going to be Severus Snape from Harry Potter. I do not like Snape's character at all. Now, I understand that you're not supposed to, but let me tell you what has irked me forever and that I have never been on board with is the one tagline, always. Oh my goodness. That is the most overrated line. It's like they think that that one line makes up for all of the horrible things that Severus Snape did during Harry Potter's stay there. He berated and bullied this kid, this like 10-year-old kid. He sat there and berated and bullied him and picked on him and he under the guise of I'll watch it over him because I have some sort of creepy stalker type lust for his dead mother. It's like, no, dude, get out of here with that mess. I mean, now his story arc, I will say, like, I enjoyed that, but the way that J.K. Rowling just sort of rationalized the reason he did all this was because of Lily. And then, I mean, that's fine, but and then Harry's just kind of like, oh, he's such a good guy. No, he's a horrible person. He is a horrible person that constantly was pursuing your mother who is married and had a child. And you're like, he's one of the most brave people I've ever met. No, get out of here with that mess. Severus Snape, terrible human being. I'm glad his storyline ended the way that it did, but how everybody can just be on board with rationalizing his behavior for 7 books. No, I'm out. All right, question number 5 is going to be, what is a show or movie that you would like to see adapted into a book? Now, this was a very interesting question because normally you see it the other way around, right? Like, what's a book that you've read that you would like to see adapted into a movie or a TV show? And that at first glance, that's what I thought it said. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be easy. But when I went back and reread it, that's a lot more difficult and nuanced. Because it's rare that I want to see a story expounded on more, especially when it comes to TV or movie. Normally, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, somewhere in there, is plenty of time to get your story across. So for me to actively go, I want to know more about this, I have to be pretty picky. So, but then as I was thinking about it, I've actually got quite a variety here. So I'm going to start with a fun one, which is Spirited Away by Hayao Miyazaki. The Studio Ghibli movie Spirited Away. I think this would make an excellent book. I would love to read a novelization of this. I would love to actually see more of what happened in this world, in this fantastical world. I think that would be a really cool book, and I would definitely pick that one up if it ever came out. Another one is going to be the M. Night Shyamalan movie, Signs. So I think this would be an excellent novelization. I think you could expound a little bit more on our characters. I think you could expound a little bit more on the setting. I also think that M. Night Shyamalan is able to express that state of dread across his films, that it would come through really well off the page. So I really think Signs would work well. And in conjunction with that, I think that his movie, The Village, would actually have been a better book. I know The Village is kind of love-hate. It's quite a divisive movie as far as the fan base goes. I really hated it the first time I watched it. The more I've watched it, the more I like it. But then the most recent time that I've watched it, there's little things that I picked up that I was actually sitting there thinking this would have worked better if he would have just wrote the script and maybe had this published or had somebody write the novelization too. And one of those things is like the monster, the big monsters in the movie. The way that when you first see them and they pull the curtain back, it's really kind of like, I don't want to say mediocre, but the big reveal was sort of a mediocre reveal. And so I think it probably would have been a better novel than a film. All right, a couple more. One would be Pacific Rim. I would love to see a Pacific Rim series where you have some giant robots fighting kaiju. I would love some kaiju type books. I've read a little bit of Kaiju #8, the manga. I know, I think it's John Scalzi came out with a kaiju book. I was going to pick it up, and I've heard that there's some content in there I wouldn't be crazy about. So I would love a book like that. Two more. One, Disney's The Kid, I think would be an excellent novel. I think that would be an excellent uplifting novel. I think that would translate well. And then the last one is going to be the Legend of Zelda series. I think the Legend of Zelda would work so well in novel form, in the written word. I actually don't really care that much about the games. I know a lot of people do. My brother Daniel, he loves the Zelda stuff. My son loves all the Zelda games. I'm just kind of indifferent on them. I love the world. I love the lore. And so I would love some books in that world, but I just don't really care about the games. And so because I don't really care about the games, I miss out on the story and the lore. All right, question number 6 is, do you like to read? Asking for a friend. Hey, Mergen. So to answer your question, it's actually some days. Some days I like to read. Most days I like to read. But there are some days where I'm just not in the mood. And so if I'm not in the mood to read, you know what I do? I don't read. My wife is a huge reader too. So if we put the kids to bed and we're both not really in the mood to pick up our books, we'll go grab a movie or a TV show, or we'll watch The Office bloopers or Parks and Rec bloopers for the 100th time through, or sometimes even Friends bloopers, just for a good laugh. So I do, yes, obviously I do like to read, but there's days that I don't. And those days that I don't really feel like reading, I just don't. All right, question number 7 is, who is your best friend? Now, that is an easy answer, and the answer is my beautiful bride. And it's even easier to answer because she's the one that asked that question. So, you. All right, question number 8 is going to be, what would you like to see more of in fantasy? A couple things. I would like to see a return to form, meaning I would love to see authors and publishers come together to lean back into plot, character, pacing, those kinds of things, and lean away from the gratuitous inclusions of graphic sex, sexual assault, explicit language, a lot of the shock factor stuff, just the gratuitous gore. I would love to see fantasy have a return to form. I'm not saying go back to just do old sword and sorcery stuff, which that's fine with me too. But what I'm saying is I wish that modern fantasy would be predominantly focused on plot, character, pacing, those kinds of things, and less on, let's see if I can add shock value. Let's see if I can get a rise out of my audience. Let's see, those kinds of things. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, standalones. I would love to see more standalones in fantasy. I love fantasy books, but part of my reservations towards picking up certain fantasy books is that they're part of a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 15 book series. And that's a daunting task, because if you tell somebody, here, read Eye of the World, and that doesn't know anything about fantasy, they might think, okay, here's one fantasy book. But then if you go, here, read all of these books, they're probably going to be far less likely to pick that up. So I would love to see more standalones. I'm not saying I want to see less fantasy series. I would just love to see more standalones in the mix as well. Okay, question number 9. If you had to pick 5 book series to read while stranded on an island, what would they be? Okay, this one took some thought. The first one was going to be Lord of the Rings. That's sort of a gimme. The second one's going to be Harry Potter. Again, kind of a gimme. And then I sat there and thought, okay, there's 2 out of the 5. What could be the third? And a series that I've loved quite a bit is the Redwall series. I really like the Redwall series. It's clean fantasy. I've described it as imagine Narnia, but it's about the animals and not the Pevensies or the humans. That's kind of what you get. So I really love the Redwall series. Not to mention, and this was a big plus for this series, is that there's like 20 something books in this series. So it's going to be difficult for me to get bored, right? I have plenty to do. The 4th series, I'm going to cheat a little bit here and say The Count of Monte Cristo. So I would supplement a series for that book for numerous reasons. One of which is there's a lot of useful information in that book that you could actually use to help you while you're stranded on a desert island. But another one is it's so dense and it's such a great story that I don't think I could not have it. All right. And the last one I've struggled with too. And so I really want to say by, but I don't want to spoil anything. So we'll come back to that in just a little bit. Since I'm not that far into it yet, I would either pick or I would pick Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams. I started reading Dragonbone Chair last year, but I was listening to it on Audible and I didn't want to miss anything. And so I was like, this is going to be a book series that I want to sit down and read, like with my eyes, read the actual written word and not just listen to because I will miss things. And I know I'm going to love that series. So for category 5, it's a toss up between Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. And to follow up with that, question number 10 is, if you had to pick 5 unread series that you were stranded with, which would they be? Okay, a lot of these are going to be series that I know have a lot of books in them. So that way I'm going to be occupied for a while. The first is going to be The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. The second is going to be the John Carter of Mars series or the Barsoom series by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I read The Princess of Mars. I think that's book 1 many, many years ago. I read it in one sitting. Fantastic book. And I meant to get into more, and for some reason, I just never picked it back up. So I would like to get back into that. So I consider that an unread series because I only read the first book and it was like probably less than 200 pages. The third series is going to be Discworld. And that's because there's like 100 books in Discworld or something. And there's a little bit of everything. So again, to keep me occupied, I would say Discworld. The 4th series is going to be the Star Wars Legends books. Again, because I want a sci-fi series and this is a vast series. It's got a little bit of everything, a little bit of all that I love. So there's going to be some books in there that I dislike. There's going to be some books in there that I like. And then there's going to be some books that I love, which means there's probably going to be some books in there that I also hate. And so it'll be a good mix up if I just had all of the Star Wars Legends books. And then the last one I kind of struggled with because, again, it's an unread series. The first one I have is The Rift War Cycle by Raymond D. Feist. And it's in large part because I got The Magician from The Broken Binding and it's so beautiful. I think I'm really going to like that trilogy. I don't know about the rest of the series. It sounds cool. But another one that everybody keeps talking about is the Malazan series by Steven Erikson. I've heard it is extremely deep, that it's pretty brutal, can be quite dark at times, but that it's so dense that there's a lot in there. So I think it would be a good series to reread. So that one's kind of a toss-up. If I had to pick, I would probably say Malazan, just because it's something different. All right, question number 11. What is your favorite black and white movie? This is an excellent question. At first, I was like, I haven't seen a whole lot of black and white movies, but if I had to pick one, the first one that came to mind was To Kill a Mockingbird, which I do love. But then immediately, while I do love To Kill a Mockingbird, it's not even a close second to Schindler's List. Favorite black and white movie of all time. One of my favorite movies of all time. If you watch Schindler's List and by the end of it, you aren't boohooing, there's something wrong with you. But yeah, Schindler's List, favorite black and white movie, hands down. Question number 12. This is a long one. says, what do you think makes characters in a book resonate with you versus not? Does it matter how the author chooses to write their thoughts and point of view, or is the writing not as impactful as what they actually just think and go through? Excellent question. So, there's sort of a series of questions here, sort of all asking around one question. I would say one of the things that helps a character resonate with me is obviously if I've been through some of the same types of things that our character has gone through. I'll just come right out and say this. Female characters don't resonate as well with me. It's not that I can't empathize with them or that I can't put myself in their shoes. As a matter of fact, Orca from the Bloodsworn Saga was my favorite character in the book. And I really loved her story, the story of motherhood, and was steeped within that book. But it is a little more difficult for me to sort of empathize there, or for that character to resonate with me, because they're not just going to experience different things, but they're going to experience the same things differently. And it's because God created man and woman equal, but not same. And so because of that, female characters, it's a little more difficult for female characters to resonate with me. Not that they can't or won't, but most of the time, my favorite characters end up being male protagonists. So that's going to be part of it. And again, this is just my opinion. Another part that really helps a character resonate with me is if the book is written in first person. I've really been thinking about that quite a bit, especially since reading Count of Monte Cristo. I love a good first person story. Now, I do love third person, but it does help me to get a little more invested when, as I'm reading, I'm reading I did or I saw rather than he did or he saw. Because instead of, and I think of it from like a video game perspective, instead of seeing it with the camera behind our main character, we're actually viewing these things through the eyes of our character. And so we get to experience what they're thinking. We get to experience how they're feeling, which is vastly different than if you're seeing it. And so I think when an author writes in the first person, it's much easier for them to show rather than tell, as opposed to somebody writing in the third person. And so I think of something like Assassin's Apprentice or even the Count of Monte Cristo. The authors have to write things that occur, or mannerisms, or the way that our character fidgets, or the gritting or gnashing of teeth, those kinds of things, to express to us, the reader, some of the emotions that they're feeling internally, whereas it's a little easier to do when you're reading from the first person. So a lot of the times the characters that resonate with me more tend to be written in the first person point of view. But then you throw the Count of Monte Cristo in there, and that throws everything out the window, because he's my favorite. Edmond Dantes is my favorite character of all time. So I will say that does help as far as it does with me. But then you said, does it matter how the author chooses to write their thoughts and point of view, or is the writing not as impactful as what they actually just think and go through? I think it can be. Like I said, I just think it's more difficult to do from the third person. So for me personally, I most of the time prefer a first person story, but it's also because when we have these plot twists, or when we have the big surprise, or the big reveal at the end, we are caught by surprise just as much as our protagonist is, because we're living through their experience. So I think that's part of it. But again, you can write a good third person story and I'm just as pulled in. I think it's just going to take a little more work to do that. Question 13 is a good one. What are your favorite and least favorite parts of BookTube/Bookstagram? Okay, let's start with my least favorite. My least favorite thing about BookTube or Bookstagram by far is lighting. I cannot get my lighting right. I've been struggling. I really want my videos to have a very high production value, as silly as that seems. And I don't have a very expensive setup. I've got a little 4K webcam. I've got a Yeti mic. I've got a couple little key lights here and a couple little colored lights off over here just for atmosphere and things. But at first I started filming in my living room and I just used the lights in the living room. That was terrible. Then I kept filming in my living room, but then I would open the blinds alongside having a key light sort of in my face. But because the clouds would get in front of the sun, it would change the lighting, which would change how the video looked entirely. And so it's frustrating for me to pin down consistent lighting. And for those of you that are making videos like this, you know what I'm talking about. It's so hard for the lighting to be consistent. And so I try to have everything in the same spot, which is why I asked a couple of weeks ago if you guys liked the way my new setup kind of was, or if you liked the old setup where I had the two bookshelves. That was just in the middle of my living room, because part of it was it's easier to record in here because right now my wife and kids are in the other room watching a TV show or a movie, and I don't have to stop or put my household on pause to record a video. But another thing is because I can make the lighting more consistent. And so if the lighting looks a little hokey or wonky in a video, I can make minor adjustments until it gets to where I'm pleased with. So yeah, the lighting is atrocious. I hate trying to figure out the lighting. Or another thing is listening to my own voice. I know everybody hates that, but when you have to sit there and edit your videos, and some of your videos can be 20 to 30 minutes long, and you realize how many times you say and like, and it's not my cup of tea or whatever. Yeah, it's very humbling to sit there and hear your own voice and listen back to yourself. And then the other thing is having to deal with some weirdos and the hatred that comes at me for my beliefs or my views. So I've had some weird comments here and there. Some people that are immediately like, "Oh, you're a Christian. Let me tell you all about the end times. Let me tell you when the day that and time that the world is going to end. And if you don't believe me, then you're a heretic," kind of thing. I've had that, and I'm like, block. But then the other one is when I post my written reviews on Goodreads, man, I have gotten blasted. And now I'm not one that just runs to the comment section. Some of the comments are funny. And so if they're funny, like, I'm going to laugh. I'm perfectly okay with a good roast. But when some of these comments are just absolutely hateful. And I've tried to have some dialogue with some people. Some people are open to it, most are not. But I do want to be able to have an open dialogue to express why I think a certain way, because I think the why matters. Like if I DNF a book and it's somebody's favorite book and they're upset, I want them to understand why, and not just, "Oh, I don't like your book, so that means I don't like you." No, it's not that. It's that I'm trying to explain as a Christian why I think I should or shouldn't read something, and maybe that will open up a conversation to where the gospel can be presented to them. And then my most favorite things about it, twofold. Number one is I have a creative outlet. I'm a creative guy. I love music. I love to draw. I love all that kind of stuff. I'm a pretty creative guy. And so this has been a great outlet for me to not just tell stories, but to piece them together and to make fun of myself and all that. I love that creative outlet. But by far my favorite part, and I don't mean this to be sappy or whatever, but is you guys. That you guys are my favorite part of BookTube and Bookstagram. I can't tell you how many like real life friends I've made because of this. People that I've never met physically in life, I talk to on a daily basis. I think of guys like Matt Pittman and Sam over at iSamwise and Dustin over at Preacher Reads and numerous others. And Jordan over at First Line Library. These guys I've met, Ted and Brian, and just a whole slew of guys. And then some people you guys don't even get to witness because they're just on Instagram, but good, faithful brothers and sisters that just edify and encourage one another. I've absolutely loved that. And I love now knowing that I'm not the only one, because for the longest time I thought, am I the only Christian that reads these kinds of books and then has to put certain things down because of my convictions? And it was very, reading is a very solitary activity. And so it's when nobody around me, not only do they not read, but the ones that do read, they definitely don't read the kinds of books that I read. But now I get to talk to you guys, and it's just been so fantastic. So thank you so much. All right, two more. Question number 14. What are some upcoming reads that you are 110% sure you will love? I've got quite a few here, and I haven't read them yet deliberately because I want to space them out for if I'm reading a book or series that I'm unsure of, I can throw one of these in there because I know it's going to pick me right back up. One of them is the R'yera Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. Another one is Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. I know I'm going to love that. Another one is Stone and Sky by Z.S. Diamani. And so, yeah, the Stone and Sky series I'm really looking forward to. Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, I mentioned before, by Tad Williams. I can't wait to get into that. A recent addition is Another Kingdom by Andrew Clavin, which was a recommendation from my friend Sam. Like, that sounds really, really good. If you guys haven't watched it, y'all go watch Sam's video with Zachary Shea, and they were talking about 5 underrated books. This was on Sam's list, and I added it immediately. Another series is the Drist series. I haven't started them, but I'm really looking forward to getting into those. Another book is Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. And then The Sword of Kaigan, I can't wait to jump into. And then lastly, one of my most anticipated reads for this year is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Cannot wait to jump into that book. Okay, guys. And lastly, the final question is, what are your thoughts after DNFing Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio? Well, surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
As of the time of recording this, I've actually picked it back up. Now, I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're going against your convictions." And it's not that. So let's just pump the brakes a little bit. I've realized I will get into this in a future video pretty soon about why I've been DNFing books so frequently. I DNF'd Empire of Silence 3 times, and I've picked it back up for a 4th time. I think my experience with numerous books and series as of late within the past couple of years has got me a little gun shy, or maybe trigger happy to DNF a book. And so sort of at like the first mention of gay, or the first mention of like an intimate scene, or the first, even if there's if I see a character that's a side character and I even get like a whiff that they're sort of leaning towards like same-sex attraction and stuff, I'm just like, oh, please don't let this be in here. And it can tarnish my reading experience. And so after sitting with it for a while and being away from it, I kept finding myself wanting to come back to it. And it wasn't against my better judgment. It wasn't like, well, I don't want to not go back into it because I've already said I'm going to, like, I don't care. If I want to read it, I'm going to read it. And as so long as I don't have genuine conviction the spirit telling me not to be entertained by these things. And I say all that to say this, that how I described Empire of Silence and the reasons behind DNFing the book were not accurate. And so I was wrong there.
Surprise, surprise.
So there are same-sex relationships mentioned in the book, one prominent one. And when I say prominent, I don't mean explicit. I don't mean gratuitous, but we go into the story with the understanding that Hadrian Marlowe has been thrust into this culture and this environment, because I don't want to give anything away, that is hedonism to its utmost. But before realizing that, and you're just down in the muck and mire with the main character, and you don't really see a lot of hope, it would be easy for me to go, okay, I'm done with this for the last time. But I kept finding myself wanting to come back to it. And then after hearing about Christopher Rocchio's conversion story and those kinds of things, which I did take into consideration, I've come to realize that the series is actually far more Christian in nature than it is not. So I was really interested to see where it was going. And so I thought, you know what? Maybe I just need to not read it physically. Maybe I need to try a different avenue. And so I had an extra credit on Audible. I picked up the audiobook, and man, I am flying through it. I love it. I mean, I really do. Now, are there aspects of it that I don't like? Yes. Are there aspects of it that I thought Christopher Rocchio could do without while still telling the story? Yes. However, I think it's a fantastic story, and I understand why he did it this way. It's because you are looking at somebody that has been thrown to the bottom of the barrel, the lowest of the low, and is not just trying to find hope, but he's trying to be hope for people. And on top of that, he's trying to take down this hedonistic culture. As of recording this video, I'm about 80% through it, and I'm loving it. So I don't want this to seem like I'm telling people to go against their convictions or their better judgment, but sometimes maybe just take take a step back, take some time away from it, and see if you find yourself wanting to come back to it, and if you convictionally feel like you need to step away from it. Because after I really thought and genuinely prayed and sought counsel about whether or not I should come back to it, I realized I didn't really have any reservations about it. I was like, okay, they said gay, so I'm out. It's kind of where I was, if I'm just being transparent with you guys, which I try to be. And so, yeah, picked it back up, and so far am loving it. And if it finishes kind of the way that it's going right now, I'm absolutely going to love it, and I'll jump into book 2 soon. And so I really want to say by and so I really want to say Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for bearing with me during this time. Thank you for asking all these wonderful questions. Thank you guys for interacting with me. Let me know down in the comment section below, what are some of your answers for these, or make a video yourself. Just put a phone up. You don't have to have good lighting and all this fancy. Just put your phone up, record a quick video. You don't have to edit it. You can leave in all the ums and awkward silences that you want. It's actually pretty fun, and you might find that you like it a little bit more than you realized. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one.